drinking champagne here. Andrew, I was gonna say, is that a beer? But I know better. What is that? Orange apple juice?
It's a mixed drink, Josh. It's
No,
it's a
it's
very
not.
high concept mixed drink. It's lemonade and iced tea.
Oh, Arnold Palmer,
Yep, you betcha.
not to be confused with John Daly's.
Though to be fair, we're one of our favorite places used to make the greatest John Daly's on the planet. I am referring to Treasure Island in Las Vegas. They used to make those and have them ready constantly, and they were fantastic. They changed their services, I think, and bartending stuff. And I went back, played blackjack there. It's still a fun place to play blackjack, but didn't taste nearly the same.
Yeah. Man, we got a lot of travel to talk about
Yes, we do.
in the next past and future.
Yeah.
How was Hawaii?
Well, I got some color, as I think we were talking about earlier. It was a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun. My fiance is the perfect travel partner. Love going places with her. We had to dodge some weather though. The Monday we were there, Josh, it poured, and they were expecting rain. They were not expecting the types of thunderstorms that we got. We were actually at the Dole Plantation, which is pretty much right in the center of Oahu. And they've been there as long as anybody on the island. They had no idea storms were coming. If they have no idea storms are coming, what chance do the rest of us have, right?
Yeah, that's
Uh,
crazy.
but there were a lot of things that we did that were really cool. A lot of places we ate at that were very cool. If anyone out there is going to Hawaii, I've got a bunch of restaurant recommendations in Oahu, not necessarily just in Honolulu either. You can travel, and there are a bunch of great little places. We went kayaking on the Thursday, and going out, we kayaked into 34-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Not an
That's
easy thing
crazy.
to do. Shout out to our tour guide, Goose, a fellow upstate New York native, by the way. We found that out last year. We were going around introducing ourselves. I said, "Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm originally from upstate New York." "Where?" "About 2 hours north of New York City." "Where?" So naturally, we asked for him again. Good guy.
That's funny.
Um, Josh, though, I've got a story for you here, and I think it's something that you can relate to and that a lot of our listeners and viewers on YouTube can relate to as well. First of all, if you like what we do and you're on YouTube, hit all those buttons down below, the like, the subscribe, the thumbs up, leave us a comment, all of that cool stuff. If you're listening to us on your podcast platform of choice, go ahead, give us that 5-star review and tell us good things in the comments, if only to massage our fragile little egos. So, we did a ton of stuff, as I've mentioned. In addition to kayaking, we hiked Pillbox on Monday. Locals will tell you that is a moderate hike. Do not listen to them. It's hard,
Hmm.
especially when you're as tall as I am. And the key to hiking up and down Pillbox is getting footholds and bending down to, brace yourself on rocks. It's not easy. We also did an Orange Theory class on the Tuesday, and I was fine with all of that. My fiance is very into exercise. When she's here, she exercises 6 days a week. She does Orange Theory. She does Soul Cycle. She's intense. My one condition was that one day out of the entire trip was what I deemed a decompress, do nothing day. It's exactly what it sounds. You go to a beach, you sit down, and the most active thing you do all day is you go up to a beach bar and get drinks. It's wonderful. So we're out of the hotel room at about 8 a.m. that morning, which was our plan because the place near our hotel that sold chairs and umbrellas and stuff for reserved spots on the beach opened at 8, and it was first come, first serve. So we're down there at about 8:15, and Alicia decides she wants to go to a coffee shop called Island Vintage, which is in the big shopping center in Waikiki Beach. No problem. We go there. Josh, the line is 50 people deep and it's not moving.
Hmm.
I kid you not on this. We found out that it was because they had one cashier dealing with all of these people and handling some of the smaller food stuff, like wrapping up pastries and donuts and stuff. One person for a crowd of just an insane amount of people, many of whom, by the way, were waiting in line for that long and apparently didn't know what they wanted when they got to the front of the line. Hit the boo button, will you please?
I gotta remember where the heck I put this thing, man.
There you go. Okay. We can all agree that's just bad form. If you're in line that long, know what you want when you get to the front. So I'm a little nervous because, yes, it's a Wednesday. It's a slower day in Hawaii, but these things are first come, first serve down there. If we
Mm-hmm.
lose out on that, we're not going to get them unless somebody leaves. So I'm a little nervous, and my fiance can tell. I'm just going, like Tina Belcher and Bob's Burgers.
I'll pretend like I know what you're talking about. You
Okay,
continue.
Bob's Burgers, great show. One of those things that you're going to need to add to your list that is ever growing.
Mm-hmm.
So Alicia looks at me and goes, "Well, do you want to go down and get the chairs and the umbrella?" Yeah, because if I don't, we run the risk of being screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, you know how there are certain times in a relationship where no matter what you do, you're wrong?
Yep.
Apparently, I wasn't supposed to want to do that because an hour and 15 minutes later, not a typo, we got out there at about 8:15. It wasn't until 9:30 that Alicia came in with her coffee, my iced tea, and a couple of cookies that she picked up. Apparently, I was supposed to wait there with her. Now, to be fair to my fiance, who I love very much and who I am very grateful does not listen to this show, that's why I can tell this story. To be fair, a couple of days later, she admitted, yeah, that line was insane and it was probably a good idea you left when you did. But that made the rest of that morning a little bit tricky. And I think
Mm-hmm.
all of us out there have been in a situation like that where no matter what you do, no matter how much you plan ahead, you're going to be wrong. And I figured you'd get a kick out of that. And hopefully some of our listeners do as well.
I mean, like to be fair, right? So look, there's been I had a very similar situation happen not that long ago, and I did not handle it as well as you did. So good on you.
Thank you.
I instead was just like it was something similar where we were like trying to get somewhere, and you know it was like I had to go to the grocery store, and I just like I don't know what in my head why I thought I had enough time to do what I needed to do, but I did not. And we were going out to dinner, and we ended up being like half hour, 40 minutes late.
The restaurants will usually give you 15 minutes
Well,
as a grace
yeah,
period.
well, our friends were there already,
Okay.
so we were meeting people. But like, I was just like, I don't know, I was just like feeling, I hate being late for stuff like that, and I was just like all worked up, and my wife's like, it's gonna be fine, like it's okay, like it's not a big deal. And here I am, I'm like upset that I like went to the grocery store and like I'm like, oh, this was her idea, or, like just all mad the
So
entire
here's
time.
the
So
big question that I have on my mind right now.
yeah.
There are two types of people in the world,
Hmm.
and you can tell by the way they go to the grocery store. One type of person makes a grocery list and treats it as a sprint where you get in and get out literally as quickly as you can. The other type of person does not make a list and meanders from one aisle to the next, going up and down no matter what they need, no matter what they originally came for. Which kind of shopper are you?
Andrew, let me tell you something. There is a grocery store that I will so my wife works for Aldi,
Okay.
right? And so we basically shop 90% of the time at Aldi. There's an
Right.
Aldi like 10, 12 minutes from our house. There's another Aldi that is about 15 minutes from our house, right? Just in slightly different direction, right? Obviously, we always go to the one that's closer. There was a time where the closer one was being remodeled and was shut down. They're like, go to this other store. I refuse to go to this other store ever again because of the amount of soccer moms who literally. So if you've been to an Aldi, right, very narrow aisles, right, like there's basically enough space for like two and a half carts,
Yeah.
right? The amount of soccer moms that literally park their carts next to each other, just stop and are just turning to each other, just having a conversation. And I'm like, there's literally nowhere for me to go. Like
My
you can't
head
go
is in my
anywhere.
hands for those of you that are listening.
And so like I told my wife about this. I was like, yeah, I'm never going back to that store. I cannot do this. And funny enough, at the time she was working at the division, right? So she dealt with like district managers and stuff. And so she told the district manager of that store, she's like, "Yeah, my husband won't shop there anymore
Oh
because,"
no.
and he starts laughing. He's like, "Yep, I can see that. That's just what happens at that store. Like I've seen it happen multiple times." So yeah, I personally don't make a list. My wife makes a list. And then I basically add on to it what I'm going to have. My wife's vegetarian, so obviously like I kind of have to cook for myself. Pick up stuff, whatever. Like if I'm gonna have sandwiches for the week, or whatever I'm gonna cook for the week and stuff like that. I was actually doing and I know we're going like super off topic at this point,
Oh yeah,
but I was
trust me.
actually
But having said that, though, this is stuff that if you're out there, you can relate to because we've all been there in those
yeah.
types of situations. We all have.
Yeah, but like I've been doing meal kits for a little bit, like HelloFresh and Blue Apron and all that stuff, just because I was like, just to have like we would buy essentials at the store, and my wife is very much like, I'm gonna eat a salad, I'm gonna make a soup, and that's what I'm gonna eat the entire week. Whereas I like to have a little bit of variety. She
Sure.
says that like I don't like eating the same thing every day, and it's like I can eat the same thing for 2 3 days, but like I can't do the whole week.
Right.
So yeah, I was doing that just to kind of supplement, and that was fun. But yeah, man, just thinking about that grocery trip, like, and like it's funny, right? Because like me, like I got all worked up about it, and then like the next day, like I gotta feel sheepish, right? So like I think was your fiance in this in
Yes.
this thing where I'm like,
I was going to make that comment, but I didn't want to step on
yeah,
you.
no, like I got like worked up about this, and I was like kind of sheepish. It was actually it's kind of a combination of both of you. Me feeling like, hey, I'm in a rush, like you were, like, hey, I got to get these things, and then feeling sheepish afterwards because whatever, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Meal was great
Um,
though. We had a great dinner.
yeah.
It was half off whiskey at the place we went to, and I had a couple drams of whiskey, and I felt a lot better. So
That'll usually help. There is one other warning that I want to pass along before we get to the body of this podcast, which is talking about the 16 announced finalists for the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame class. Trust us, we're getting there. This is a warning to any guy between the ages of, I'll say, 18 and 35. Let's just say that. You know how everybody, when they're getting ready, has a ritual. You listen to music, you watch TV, you have something on in the background. Josh, your wife wouldn't happen to be aware of a podcast slash YouTube show called Gals on the Go, would she?
if she does, I don't know the names of any of them.
Consider yourself very, very fortunate.
I'm gonna
And
Google
that's
this.
all I'm going to say on that. Those people have put together a very sound business model. I have seen the view counts, I have seen the subscriber counts. Good work. You guys do you. You're doing great. You're making a lot of money. I'm not here to judge, but it's not for me. I'll say that much. And there's just there's so much content out there that just it rots your brain if you listen way too close. Like it's like listening to pop music for the lyrics. You don't do it. So yeah.
I actually just texted my wife to see if she watches this, so
Okay.
she'll.
I'd like to hear her response to this, and I will apologize in advance if you wind up getting the victim of having to
Never heard of it.
listen to that. Okay, good, good. Your wife just went way, way up in my book. Yeah, they have a tendency to go to the same couple of lines in their videos. Like what I tell my fiance is, if you drink every time they say they're obsessed with something that they're probably being paid to talk about, take a drink. So it's modern day influencer culture, and it's not for me.
Yeah, I think these girls look too young to
They're
be
in
on
their early to
anything.
mid 20s. Yeah.
Yeah, no, too young for anything my wife would
Yeah.
watch.
Good. Okay. Yeah. That was the other thing from the trip that came away as a cautionary tale. But on the flip side and on a serious note, it's fantastic going with my fiance to places. It's great. Ate a lot of very good meals, and we're starting to prepare for our summer trip. We're going to Italy for a little over a week in June. So that's going to be a blast. We made lodging reservations already. We're going to be in Rome for 5 days. We're going to be in Naples for 3 or 4. So very excited about that. The only downside is I'm going to miss the first week of the Alameda County Fair in Pleasanton, but if you're going to miss the Alameda County Fair, being in Italy is a pretty good excuse, I think.
That's awesome. So you're gonna miss the entire fair or just
Just the first week.
first week?
Just the first week. We fly out on the 14th, get into Italy on the 15th. We come back on the 23rd, which is going to be a really long day. We
Yeah.
fly out of Naples first thing in the morning. We have a 7-hour layover in Paris and then a nonstop flight from Paris to San Francisco. We wind up getting back into San Francisco at 6 p.m., which is probably about 4 or 5 a.m. the next day in Italy. So that's going to be a long day.
Yeah, because especially because you don't want to waste the day, right? So you're probably gonna get to like drop your bags off somewhere and hit the ground running, which is gonna be you're muted. Andrew, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, what'd you do?
Oh, that's why I hit the mute button on my microphone. That's not good. I didn't realize that was the mute button. Anyway, what was the last part of that you got?
I literally got nothing. I just said that you're gonna hit the ground running, and then
Yes, precisely. It's
yeah.
going to be a lot. It's going to be sort of an insane travel itinerary, but we're really looking forward to it. We're excited, and it's nice to be able to go to special places with people that are special to you. And yes, that is me trying to get points after asking everybody if I'm the asshole for wanting to go to the beach at the time we were supposed to go to the beach.
Yeah. So people watching on YouTube, unfortunately, that is not going to get edited out. But audio
Yeah.
people, you probably won't notice much of a difference. But
Okay, good. Yes, audio people. Good audio people have on the wrong lead. Thank you.
um, yeah. So it's funny, traveling is something that me and my wife want to do more of. Um, for the past couple years, we've basically gone to Vegas like 2-3 times a year, maybe closer to 3 to 4 times a year. And you know, honestly, like a lot of it was just circumstance, right? With COVID,
Yeah.
flights were super cheap, and MGM was just like begging people to come stay with them. So most of the time, it was just like, all right, bring money. We bring our gambling money, bring money for food. Everything else is basically taken care of. I mean, we were getting round trip flights for like 120 to $150 a person.
Yep.
So like we just like kept going, and like this year, my wife is like, look, like I enjoy going to Vegas, not as much as you do, but maybe let's not do the 3 4 times a year. So kind of compromise. Like I get a lot more time off than she does.
Mhm.
So obviously I'm going next week. Actually, this time next week I will be in Vegas. We going for NHC weekend. I'll be playing the last chance, first chance, see if we can spike a seat there. Um, and hanging out with some basically all the rest of the on the wrong lead team, and just kind of hanging out. And then we're gonna go. Me and my wife are gonna go as a couple in during Memorial Day. So
Nice.
we're gonna fly out Sunday, and we're gonna come back Thursday night. So we got a nice comp suite at Vidara for that week.
Awesome.
And then I'll probably try and go sometime in the fall again, but I think we're gonna try and do some other stuff. But funny enough, like my time off, like I said, I get about 5 weeks vacation, and I just started taking with a bunch of projects and stuff coming up. My boss is like, hey, just try and put all your time off in for the rest of the year, the rest of the school year, basically, right? So the school year resets sometime in August.
Yeah.
So I started putting everything in. So I took, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Derby week off, to basically jam out content and, obviously prepare
You
for
didn't
that.
take 50 Tuesday off?
I did not take
Shame
50
on
Tuesday
you.
off.
On a
Um,
serious note, though, shame on you, Churchill Downs. Not everything needs to be a stupid marketing play. And that's a stupid marketing play.
I was thinking about going to Derby. I have a friend that lives in Louisville, but I didn't want to put her like in a tough spot and be like, "Hey, I'm coming. Like, is it okay if I come by?" And also, I don't have tickets or anything yet, so I didn't want to do all
Right.
that. So I don't know. Maybe something will happen where I end up in Louisville that weekend, but more than likely not. I am going to try to get to Belmont for Belmont Day. So that I took for Thursday, Friday off, I think, for that. Then I was like just starting getting crazy. I took like Black Eyed Susan Day off, and I'm like, really? Like, do I need that day off?
Yeah,
No,
you were
probably not.
saying that. Yeah, it's not as big a day as it used to be, unfortunately. There are still some fun races on the card, but it's not the kind of card that it used to be. And the Black Eyed Susan just isn't as important as it used to be either.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm still thinking of trying to get up to Saratoga. Probably if I go, it'll probably be closing weekend.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens though. I don't know. Stuff can change. Maybe I don't take as much time off for the Derby. I will definitely not be buying the pink sheet. Um,
Yeah, because you'll be getting them comped.
but yeah, but Andrew, so I'll be in Vegas next week, and then you're going the week after, right?
Yep, I am actually flying out 2 weeks from today for the annual March Madness sojourn to Vegas with my dad. That's always a lot of fun. I actually wrote up last year's trip, two-part recap for playnevada.com that I'm sure I'll be revisiting on my Twitter account for those of you that want to relive that. Last year's trip went from really humiliating to really good. If you saw somebody claiming that Kentucky was going to beat St. Peter's by an inordinate number of points, it was probably me. But the combination of Duke beating Michigan State and Virginia beating North Texas and the NIT both on the Sunday, Josh, that made my trip. And I don't usually say that about small clusters of games. I'll usually bet, 25 here, 25 there, 55 here, 55 there, whatever. But those were the two games that I loved that day. You take your stand, you're right, you get rewarded for it. Sounds like a handicapping axiom we should use for horse racing, huh?
Yep. We'll do the 30-second March Madness discussion here.
Okay.
I know we're a week out from conference championships, like kind of finalizing and everything like that. Selection Sunday is obviously what, like 10 days away at this point. Um, what if you were to say that if you were to make a futures bet, say right now, who are you looking at?
Well, I don't necessarily know about that. What I will say, having seen this team a couple of times from where I am, if St. Mary's goes up against a team where all they do is jack threes, St. Mary's is not losing that game. The way you beat St. Mary's is by going inside. They're beatable in the low post. Their low post guys are good offensive players, but not necessarily the best on defense. It's how Gonzaga was able to beat them the other day. They got a split with Gonzaga, which is good, but St. Mary's is probably going to be a 5 or a 6 seed, most likely. Just watch the matchups with them and be conscious of who they're playing and how they like to play, because that's ultimately going to determine that. And obviously, matchups for every team are key, but if they're playing a guard oriented team, they start employing this style of play where if they're up by 5, it seems like they're up by 10. But if they're playing a team that's heavy on inside and working the ball in, that's when they're probably going to get into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, I put like two $50 futures bets down, I think. One on UCLA. I think I got
UCLA is pretty good.
UCLA, and then I got some on Alabama, and I thought I got pretty decent prices. Alabama though is going to be a little dicey, I think.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough team to
With
root for. And no disrespect to the Alabama program, but the less said about the stuff going on there, the better.
hmm yeah, it very interesting. So UCLA though, I got a better price on, so I at least I got two live
We
tickets.
know
So
that you are not the only prominent horse racing handicapper that will be rooting for UCLA in the tournament.
I don't really want to even just like come close to talking about who I think you're talking about. So we'll move on.
Mission
Uh,
accomplished.
uh, yeah. So you know, obviously, we did something similar like this for the Eclipse Awards, right? In which you got to talk about your ballot there. But we don't necessarily have to like talk about ballot here, but I think we could talk about some of these. Um, some of the 16 finalists that we have here for the National Museum of Racing's 2023 Hall of Fame ballot. I have yet to get out there to the National Racing Museum. I hear
You
it's a
should. They just modernized it during COVID. They took advantage of that time. I have not been there in a couple of years. I have heard, though, that it is absolutely wonderful. And credit to the people there. Brian Bouye, their communications director, really good guy, sharp guy. Used to work for these guys,
yeah.
actually. And there was one year that and he's going to hate me for telling this story, but I don't care, that he rivaled Russ Harris in the New York Daily News as the all media champion back when every paper had 5 or 6 handicappers and that title really truly meant something. He was dueling with him on the last day and a DQ went the wrong way for him and he wound up losing by 1.
I was going to make a really funny joke about, unlike your championship that obviously happened after, just like your Beamy Award that also
Hey,
happened
you
after.
know, they count. Nobody keeps track of when Ric Flair had his title reigns.
Uh,
And yes, wrestling reference, everybody out there drink. But no,
I'll drink to
Brian's
that.
a good guy. The people at the Hall of Fame give a significant damn about preserving the history of the sport and are being able to market it to people who may only go to Saratoga once a year. It's a really cool place. You need to go there. Tom Durkin runs tours. I would highly recommend those. If you've never met
The
Tom,
sandwich guy?
the announcer.
I only know him from the sandwich commercial on Steve Bick where he gets those roast beef sandwiches. That was so good. I had the second one on the drive home.
Yeah. Tom is the antithesis to the statement, never meet your heroes. Guy was the soundtrack to my childhood every summer. And I got to work with him a little bit, got to write about him, got to talk to him, just turned into a friend of mine, phenomenal human being. And if we could clone him 100 times and send him to every racetrack, we'd wind up with a lot more racing fans. I'll say that much.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So and kind of taking a step back, talking about museums. You've been to the Derby Museum, or you've never been to
Nope.
Kentucky, have you?
Never
The
been to
Derby
Kentucky.
Museum, I thought was actually very well done. I thought it was going to be like small and just like kind
Oh,
of
no.
no. It was actually really nice. It was way nicer than I thought it was going to be. So if the Racing Hall of Fame is even like anything remotely close to that, like I think it definitely be really cool to check out.
It's
Um,
awesome. It's
yeah.
it's a really cool place.
Um, so talk to me a little bit about voting. Is this kind of like you can vote for all of them, you can vote for none of them? Like there's no requirement, there's no limit.
That's correct.
Okay.
If you're a voter, you can vote for as many or as few as you want. Now, the key quirk was a couple of years ago, the Hall of Fame changed the requirements for entry. It used to be they would take the top 4 who were over X amount of percent. Now it's a straight up and down vote. If you get more than 50% of the votes, you're in the Hall of Fame. That was meant to eliminate a backlog that had built up because, hey, Hall of Fame voters are pretty stingy. I don't know if that's the case in other sports. Oh, wait, baseball. Yes, it is. Um, but yes, the problem with that, I think, is it sort of backfired. And I think it made a lot of people who were already stingy with their ballots a little bit more inclined to leave what they thought were borderline contenders off of their ballots because now the rationale is, hey, if I'm wrong and 50% of people want this horse in the Hall of Fame, that horse is going in the Hall of Fame and I'll live with it because it's a lower barrier. But when you do that, you wind up with a lot of horses and trainers and jockeys too that wind up falling just short. So we'll see how many horses, trainers, jockeys get in. This year's potential class, there are 16 names on the ballot. Josh, there are usually between 10 and 12. This is the biggest such group I can remember in my time as a voter. And there are a lot of first time nominees that I think are going in. I wouldn't be at all surprised if on Hall of Fame induction day, we wind up with a program that has 6 or 8 honorees as part of it. And that's a huge class for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so Um, let's I guess we should probably set the table here a little bit. Andrew, how long have you been following horse racing?
Since I was a kid going to this place right back here,
So how many years?
30.
30?
Yeah.
This is going to be going into my fifth Kentucky Derby.
I get to play teacher. This is great.
So, yeah, so like the first Kentucky Derby I saw, the first bet, actually the first bet I made was Kentucky Oaks Day 2018. My brother, I was at work and my brother was at Arlington Park and he was texting me horses he liked at Churchill and at Arlington. And the funny thing is, my brother, my brother's an okay handicapper. Uh, he's
Can't give
very
him too
much
much credit, right?
no, he's an okay handicapper. He's very much he's much older school, and he's I mean he's I'm trying to think how much older than me he is. He's what 7 years older than me, but he is very much win maybe win place
Okay.
exacta trifecta player, not horizontal whatsoever. The
Okay.
only time he'll play a pick five is if he wants me to put a ticket together and we split it. Right?
Okay.
He is not a horizontal player whatsoever. Maybe he'll do the occasional double, but he's very much old school, right? Like nowadays, right? Anybody who's picked up the game in the past 10, 15 years probably is very much pick four, pick five, pick six player, right? The horizontal is trying to get those big scores. My brother is very, very much, he's happy to go to the track with 100 and leave with 500, right? Because he spikes maybe a nice exacta and a win bet, right?
Sure.
Whereas where everyone else, I feel like we're shooting for the moon sometimes with these pick fours, pick fives.
Right.
But um, so he's just he's texting me, and I mean, like I said, he's an okay handicapper, but he could not miss that day. And I was like, man, if he could figure this out, I could figure this out, right? And then obviously the next day, there was a horse in the Pat Day Mile, uh, Funny Duck. And dude, when I placed the win bet on Funny Duck and he won at some huge price, I felt like the smartest man in the world.
That horse was impossible to have.
I,
I remember the
I don't.
race. I remember a lot about that day because that Derby was actually very good for me. I had the cold Justify Good Magic exacta that paid 70 some odd dollars for $2. But Funny Duck was freaking impossible to have. I remember the track was a bog that day, and that undoubtedly helped that horse.
Yeah, because distorted humor
Yep.
is I think a mud influence. So
Yeah. One of the best in the
um,
game. Yeah.
and so that was basically my entire play was like I don't even remember what PPs I was looking at. I think it might have been the DRF Easy form,
Yeah.
which
I
I don't
feel
even know
like
if
you've
they
told
make
me
it
that
anymore.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like crazy. Like it doesn't make it like I couldn't recreate that whatsoever. But anyways, long story short, I have not been in the game or paying attention to the game very long. On top of that, I'm very much a as much as I'm a fan of the game, I'm very much a bettor, very much a handicapper. For the most part, if it is not on the PPs, I don't know about it. Like it's just fair enough. I looked at this list of horses here, and I will name you the ones that I recognize.
Okay.
Arrogate, obviously, has put out or has sired some nice horses, and obviously, met an untimely.
Yeah. We lost him way too soon.
California Chrome, obviously, because all I know about him is that everyone on Twitter goes crazy about him and went crazy when
One
he went to
way or the
Japan.
other. Yes.
Um, Game on Dude, I think there's a stakes race named after him, and he's a Baffert horse. That's about as much as I know about that. However, the Grace is a dam to somebody really good, isn't she?
Yes, she was. She was also the horse of the year in 2011, I believe. She beat the boys in the Woodward that year, and she had a rivalry with another horse on that list by the name of Blind Luck.
And actually, I am trying to remember. I could have sworn who are her progeny? I feel like there's a big horse Saint Tappet. That's who I'm
Yep,
thinking of.
that's
Yeah.
what it was. Yeah, St. Tappet
Sa-
looked like a real prospect for about 5 minutes last year.
Yeah, that was the big one. I think that was the big reason
Yeah.
people were looking at that horse. Lady Eli, I think, is a Chad Brown horse that people went crazy about.
Yes. Was a
Um,
Chad Brown turf horse who darn near died due to laminitis, who has a Hall of Fame resume with grade one wins at ages 2, 3, 4, and 5, but will get in as much on her story as her talent.
Rags to Riches, one of the few fillies to win the Belmont.
Yes.
And then Songbird is a horse that lost a photo.
Depending on who you ask.
Yeah. Um, I will say, so I got a couple questions here, right? So this is your chance to be teacher here.
Okay.
Which is the race that everyone talks about for Arrogate?
So there were a couple. Personally, I remember the one back here.
The Travers,
Yep, where that horse was 11-1 was one of my first real public touts as a handicapper doing
Uncle
TVG's
Chuck.
pregame Periscope. Arrogate won by as much as he wanted and set a new track record in the process. Now, after that, he goes to California, beats California Chrome on the square in the Breeders' Cup, earns a gigantic figure. Goes to Gulfstream, where Bob Baffert had not been since he won the Breeders' Cup Sprint with a horse named 36 Red. Wins the Pegasus. That was a race where California Chrome wound up getting hurt and wasn't really persevered with. Then goes to Dubai. Poor gun runner. Arrogate got left at the start that day. Mike Smith was looking backwards, trying to figure out where a noise was coming from, spotted the field 3 or 4 lengths right out of the gate. Arrogate still runs down Gunrunner. Gunrunner's Dubai World Cup wins probably 70% of the Dubai World Cups ever run. And Arrogate won in such a manner that the track announcer called him the man of war of the 21st century. Now he came back, and unfortunately for him, the big races that year were all at Del Mar. And he hated Del Mar. He came back in the San Diego handicap. A, he probably needed a race. B, he hated the track. He was off the board at 1-5, I think it was. Still manages to run second in the Pacific Classic behind Collected, another Bob Baffert trainee. If that horse wins the Pacific Classic, I think he's remembered as an absolute slam dunk Hall of Famer because it's another grade one win in a big race, but then falls to Gunrunner in the Breeders' Cup, and that was his last start. The question with Arrogate is the same question we're going to be asking ourselves as voters of a couple of other horses over the next 5 or 6 years in the form of Justify and Flightline. Do you reward peak of their powers form, or do you penalize for the fact that there wasn't as much longevity as maybe we're used to? It's a fascinating question. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but one of my first criteria as a voter, and there's no set criteria for anyone as a voter, you vote what you want. My first question that I ask is, can you tell the story of horse racing in this era without including candidate X? I don't think you can tell the story of horse racing in the time period that Arrogate ran in without including him. And for that reason, I think Arrogate goes in.
I watched the replay of that Dubai World Cup. I thought I was expecting more because people said it was like the best race they've ever seen in their lifetime, and I mean, like, yeah, okay, cool. Horse got left and won, like, big
Look at
deal.
who he beat, though. And look at what Gunrunner wound up doing later that year, winning the Whitney, winning the Woodward, winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. Gunrunner was a monster.
Let me tell you a little bit something about Gunrunner. All right, I got him mixed up with Gunnavera, so I could not tell you much about Gunrunner.
Okay, we're going to need to have an educational moment here, but that's a story for another time. Gunrunner was something.
Sorry, I'm 2018, man. I'm telling you, man. My knowledge starts at 2018. So
Kids these days.
it's like I said, I laughed. I mentioned this Baffert horse when you were talking about, but I just remember coming up into the Travers. Was it like 2 or 3 years ago? Baffert had that lightly raced horse, Uncle Chuck. Everyone's like, "Oh man, is this the next Arrogate?" And he went off at like some like really like low price in the Travers, and horse didn't run a
Yeah, and
step.
before we go much further, I need to correct myself. It
Hmm.
wasn't 36 red for Baffert, it was 30 slews. I got those two horses
Mm.
mixed up. 36 red, I think, was a Nick Zito horse.
Well,
But
man, that's it. You're gonna get. They're gonna take your vote away.
no, they're not. Trust me, people have been trying to take my Eclipse Award vote away from me for years for various reasons that don't make any sense. And hey, listen, if you're serious about take this guy's vote away, I'm going to outlive you.
Oh man. Um, but no, but in all seriousness, I can only go by, what I've heard people say. And arrogate, like, to me, like, I kind of agree with you when people talk about horses that did something special that like they remember watching this. Arrogate is one of the horses that comes up. But I think similar to what you said is, the flame was bright, but it was short.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you compared the two horses that I think if you didn't vote for, you're an idiot. So in Justify and Flightline when that time comes, but
Yeah,
um,
it's not a question that I think as Hall of Fame voters we want to answer
no.
because if you're a Hall of Fame voter, you've been around for a while. You
Hmm.
remember when top flight horses ran 8, 10, maybe 12 times a year. Justifying Flightline ran 6 times. It's unfortunate. That's the way horses are built now. And as much as I would like to be part of the crowd, like trying to make a difference by penalizing them and whatnot, I can't do it. I think if you have a Hall of Fame that's designed to recognize the best horses, trainers, jockeys from each era, and you don't include an undefeated Triple Crown winner and a horse that won every grade one race he was in by a city block, I think you're outsmarting yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't
Um,
like saying that. I like horses that run. That unfortunately is just the state of the game now.
yeah, and so real quick, I know we like went down the list, but I'll actually give the full list here, which is Arrogate, Blind Luck, California Chrome, Game On Dude, Harvard the Grace, Kona Gold, Lady Eli, Rags to Riches, and Songbird. So Andrew, why don't you kind of break this down for me? Like, do you kind of have this tiered out? Like, do you already kind of know where you're gonna go, or how do you kind of feel about this?
I've got a general idea, and I'll go from the bottom up. Josh, I don't want to assume anything about movies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen Mean Girls?
Absolutely.
Rags to Riches has been on the ballot for several years running, and I understand why. If you're a filly that wins the Belmont, you're special. It feels as though they're trying to make fetch happen. They should stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. I understand there are passionate rags to riches people out there. I've gotten into Twitter wars with some of them. I work with one of them. I get it. She was special. After the Belmont, she ran once. She got beat. I understand she beat Curlin. I understand she won a couple of grade ones earlier in the season. I don't think she did enough. And if Smarty Jones is not in the Hall of Fame after winning everything he won in the early part of his season, running second in the Belmont, never running again, I can't back Rags to Riches in the Hall of Fame. I have in the past voted for both Blind Luck and Havre de Grace because I don't think you can tell the story of racing during their eras without talking about that rivalry. Josh, if you want to see something special, Google up Blind Luck's run in the Alabama. She was the worst looking horse I have ever seen in the paddock prior to that race. She was a very small filly and she was totally washed out. She wanted no part of it, or so it appeared. Jerry Hollendorfer was looking at her in the saddling paddock at Saratoga. They weren't walking her around publicly. She was in one of the stalls, and she looked like a teenager having a nervous breakdown. I wish I had a better explanation of that, but that's how it looked. They lead her out to the racetrack. She's dead last going into the backstretch. She circles the whole field in the last half mile of a 1.25 mile race. That was special. And there were a lot of special moments between those two horses. I voted for them in the past. I expected them to fall off the ballot because they'd been on the ballot for so long and because there were a number of horses that I think are going to get in on the first ballot. Kona Gold is a popular name among a lot of people. It seems like an annual thing. Kona Gold's on the ballot. Kona Gold doesn't get in. Angry columns are written. I'm there on Kona Gold and I have voted for him. I understand why people have not. I don't think he's a slam dunk. I think he's a borderline choice. Wouldn't be surprised either way. Songbird probably gets in, even losing that photo. I'm sorry, I'm playing to the conspiracy theorists, but I was there for that race against Beholder. That's one of the best races I have ever seen. I remember I was covering the Breeders' Cup for TVG's social media. I decided to go on the Friday. Ren Carruthers went on the Saturday. After the distaff, I texted Ren saying, yeah, you can have Saturday. I'm good. Because that's how good that race was. But Songbird did a lot, won a lot of big races. Very, very, very fast horse. Arrogate, as I mentioned, I think gets in. Lady Eli, as I mentioned, I think gets in. There's one narrative that I just want to blow up out of the water. You mentioned that people go crazy whenever California Chrome gets discussed. I'm not saying he's a super horse, but acting like he's not a Hall of Famer is just stupid. He won the Horse of the Year twice, banked 8 figures in earnings, ran second to Arrogate in one Breeders' Cup, ran third to Bayern in another Breeders' Cup, won the Derby, won the Preakness, won the Dubai World Cup, won the Pacific Classic, won a lot of big races. He's a Hall of Famer, and if you don't like it, shut up.
I'm just here for the memes.
It's okay. It's all right. Trust me. If there are passionate people out there, they'll make me a meme. I'm sure. I've been called worse by better. So have at it, people.
Yeah, it's like the thing that kills me about California Chrome are just like there was a Twitter thread once where someone had taken a picture of California Chrome when he was in Japan. They're like, look at how unhappy the horse is. It's like, dude, were you there? Like, do you know? Like, I don't know. People are crazy.
If I may chime in on that, because I hadn't seen the Twitter thread, I can actually provide a little bit of insight. Forgive my language. California Chrome's a mean son of a bitch. I went to his stall a couple of times. I've got a couple of photos. I talked to the Shermans once at Los Alamitos for a Horse Racing Nation piece back when I wrote for them for a little bit. He's mean. He tried to bite me, tried to bite Mike Joyce, tried to bite a whole bunch of people. That's just him.
Well, in fairness, ITP also tried to bite Mike Joyce, so
not touching that one.
All right, so then we got a couple of trainers.
A bunch of trainers, actually.
Yeah, so like here's like the thing to me, right? Like when I look at other sports, right, and you look at Hall of Fame, it's usually until you retire, right, that you don't get nominated. So what is like the criteria to be nominated for the Hall of Fame?
20 years. That's how Todd Pletcher was able to get in on the first ballot a couple of years ago. For trainers, it might be 25. For jockeys, I think it's 20. But yeah, there are a lot of trainer nominees, and I'll spare a lot of time. I've got a lot of respect for a lot of the nominees on this list. There's a lot of accomplishments there, a lot of money won. To me, the list of trainers represents a Hall of Very Good. I don't think it represents the Hall of Fame. And admittedly, my standards for trainers are pretty insanely high. But Mark Casse took a while to get in. He didn't get in until he trained a Belmont winner to win a leg of the American Triple Crown with Sir Winston. That's what it took for him getting in. And if you look at the list of trainers, you see Christophe Clement, you see Doug O'Neill, You see Graham Motion, a couple of others. Very good trainers. I think a lot of them are one or two big horses away from getting there. The only trainer that I would not be surprised if he gets in is John Shirreffs. Of course, known as the trainer of Zenyatta, trained Giacomo, Ken Rudolph's favorite horse for obvious reasons. A couple of others. I wouldn't be stunned if John Shirreff's in. Not sure yet why I'm going with that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we have a Hall of Fame that's devoid of any trainers, at least electing in this way. There are other ways in which horsemen and horsewomen can get elected in. There's the Pillars of the Turf category, there's the Historical Review category. But as far as the conventional voting process, I'd be a little bit surprised if any trainer from the list I mentioned earlier gets in. I wouldn't be stunned if Sheriffs gets in.
No disrespect to Mark Cassie, but I think I would have basically every single person on this list rather train my horse than Mark Cassie. So do with that
That
what you will.
that's him saying that. That's him right there. Don't lump me in. If you're going to be mad at me, be mad at me for
Okay,
something
okay,
I've
that's not fair.
actually said and done.
That's not fair. If the horse is at Woodbine, I would rather have Mark Cassie train.
Well, if the horse is named Tepin, I think you want Cassie training.
Although, why is there's a jockey agent on here?
Really?
Yeah, Kieran McLaughlin. He's a jockey agent, isn't he?
Yeah. That's an interesting case because obviously Kieran was an exceptional trainer, trained the likes of Invasor, who is a Hall of Famer. I'm not sure he was at the top level long enough. I think that hurts him.
I didn't realize like Graham Motion been in the game that long. I thought he was a
Yeah,
little bit younger. Doug O'Neill, I think is probably just yeah.
I think O'Neill gets in eventually. You can't win multiple Kentucky Derbies and not get in at some point. I'm just not sure he's there yet. And I think the fact that there are 16 names on the ballot this year probably hurts him.
That's really funny because um like I said, coming from only following the sport since 2018, like you telling me that Doug O'Neill's won multiple Kentucky Derbies, I could not fathom that. I'm actually Googling
I'll have
who.
another and Nyquist.
I'm just like, yeah, that's crazy. He runs horses at Golden Gate. Why is he winning derbies?
Hey, now don't knock Golden Gate. Golden Gate is a nice place with nice people. And one of my favorite people in racing is the track announcer.
Oh, Pavel, I remember that horse.
Yep. See, you go down a rabbit hole and all of a sudden you wind up finding out new things. This is one of the things about this game. There really is a lot of cool history, and you remember the races you see in person. You remember some of the things that you see on TV. You remember the big scores. You remember the losses. In my case, you really remember the losses. But
He trained a really good pony.
Lava Man,
Yeah.
yeah, world class pony. There is one other name on that list. There's one jockey, and it's Corey Nakatani, and this is another one of the finalists that is there, has been there multiple years, and has a very loud group of supporters. And I see him in a lot of ways the same way I see Kona Gold, in that I've voted for him because at his best, he was one of the best. He had a lot of issues with his weight. He had a lot of issues with interpersonal relations with certain trainers. He was the original rider for Shared Belief. Great little trivia there. He wound up getting taken off the horse in favor of Mike Smith, and Mike Smith was the one that won a lot of the big races on him. But I have him on my ballot. At least I have the last couple of years, and I assume I will again this year. Not getting to 4,000 wins hurts him a little, but there was a run of about 5 years in the early 2010s where if you had a serious horse on the downhill turf course at Santa Anita, Nakatani moved that horse up 2 or 3 lengths right away. And that's not something you can say about a lot of riders.
I'm laughing because there was someone had posted on Twitter that they were talking about Corey Nakatani and like trying like be positive, right?
Yeah.
But they said they kind of worded it unfortunately. They
Oh, no.
said having him on board was often the difference between your horse winning or losing.
Oh no.
And
And
like,
somebody took it.
well, I just like to in my head, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you could probably say the same thing about Joel Rosario, you know. It depends which one shows up.
Well,
But
at his best, he was one of the best, and I would have him on my ballot. It's a case where I'm not sure how it's going to go over again this time, and he may well be a victim of the fact that there are 16 nominees to go around, and there are some really high standards among the Hall of Fame voters. But we'll see. Again, to me, he's sort of a borderline inductee. I voted for him. I understand why people don't. I don't think he's a slam dunk. I do think there are some slam dunks in this class, and I think it's going to be pretty entertaining to see the Hall of Fame, ceremony in Saratoga in August. Just if for nothing else, than I really hope they can bring in Art Sherman to do Chrome's speech, because I don't think there will be a dry eye in the house for that one.
you think if Nakatani doesn't get hurt, he gets in?
I don't know, because all jockeys get hurt.
No.
I think the weight troubles hurt him a little bit. I think there were other things that hurt him a little bit more. But again, just being that little bit short of 4,000. Now, mind you, there are some jockeys that are in the Hall of Fame that I didn't vote for or wouldn't have voted for if I had a vote at the time. This is going to get me crucified, but I would not have voted for Chris Antley when he got in. I understand why he got in. At his best, he was a phenomenal rider. I didn't think he was at that level for long enough, but it's an interesting human element kind of thing. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when the votes get tallied and we wind up finding out who's going in. I believe they announced that in late April.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I this stuff's always interesting. I kind of look forward to, I don't know, what am I looking at? Probably like 2, 3, 4 years from now when I actually start recognizing and knowing the horses. Um, and like I said, it's funny because people are like, "Oh, like, you haven't seen this, you haven't seen it." I'm like, "No, like, like, what does me watching the 2018 Pegasus World Cup have to do with me handicapping the seventh race at Turfway Park on a Thursday night? Like, hey, I saw the Run Happy thing at Turfway Park. That was kind of impressive. Like, but it's funny because I don't know. It's funny with horse racing, because, like you said, right? You were talking about the Dubai World Cup, and you're like, well, yeah, like look at how he embarrassed Gunrunner. I'm like, all right, who the heck is Gunrunner, right? Like I had never seen him run. For all it could have been, that could have been the third race at Gulfstream Park where the horse broke last and won at 1-9. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of context that you need to have, and it really is hard to be like to go back and watch some of these races and be, without a lot of the background, and have the same feelings that other people have, right? Um, the for the longest time, the best horse I'd ever seen run was Justify, right? It was also one of the first horses I had ever seen run, and it wasn't until I saw Flightline completely embarrass, everybody at the Breeders' Cup Classic where I'm like, oh, that's the new best horse I've ever seen run. And will I see another Flightline? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, I look forward to having this discussion with you, hopefully in a couple of years where I can chime in again, chime in more and not just be like dumbfounded by these horses. It's kind of funny.
Well, I'll tell you this: I intend to be here whether anyone likes it or not.
That sounds like a threat.
It's a promise.
Andrew Champagne is still a threat.
Exactly. And I will be for a very, very, very long time.
Do you think Mark Cassidy sent Joel Rosario like a really nice like gift or anything after getting into the Hall of Fame based off his ride? Because I don't think another jockey gets Sir Winston home.
I mean, I'm sure that helped. It's an interesting case because obviously Cassie had a resume that was close to Hall of Fame status before that. The year before, remember, he sent out Classic Empire in the Preakness and got nailed on the wire by cloud computing in a beat that still grinds my gears.
I don't remember.
Yeah, it
That was
was rough.
2017.
Just trust me, it was rough. It was horrible. It was horrible. Classic Empire at his best was a darn good horse, but they sort of had some trouble getting his mind right, and he won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as a 2-year-old over one of the most prominent sires now, and Not This Time. Not This Time was a big buzz horse leading up to that Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Classic Empire beats him, goes away for a while. I believe he ran a dud before he won the Arkansas Derby that year. And all of a sudden, he's back. Didn't run all that well in the Kentucky Derby, if I remember correctly. Had every chance to win the Preakness. I had him singled everywhere. And Chad Brown beats him with Cloud Computing. There are some things that just stick with you. And ultimately, as corny a segue as this sounds, it's why I enjoy the Hall of Fame voting, man. I mean, there's no better honor that I'm going to have in my career than to be a voter for the Hall of Fame of the sport that I love and care about very, very, very much. It's something that I will never not appreciate greatly. It's something that is a responsibility I do not take lightly. And it's something that I'm going to be proud of for the rest of my career, rest of my life, everything. It's really, really cool. And just being able to bust open the envelope you get from Saratoga Springs, New York, and see the ballot, it's special. It really is.
Yeah, no, this is I'm like I said, I'm glad like we're kind of, we come from two different uh kind of viewpoints a little bit, right? Like me, like purely as handicapper and better, and use more as somebody who's like done it their entire life, like watched it their entire life, worked in the industry, and obviously gets gets to vote on these things, whether people like it or not.
Hey, now I
uh
can I can do the handicapping stuff too. Right
yeah.
here. How many of these have I won? How many of these have I won? In the words of Big E, 3 ain't enough. I need 5.
Oh goodness.
Yes, that's another wrestling reference out there for you. I don't know what the over under is, but if you want to ever influence the betting, just let me know. I can be easily swayed.
I was laughing because I was at I was at work, and I was talking with one of my coworkers, and we were just kind of talking, shooting the shit and stuff, and he mentioned something about, oh, we were talking about tickets. I was trying to buy tickets for a concert, and I told him how just outrageous like the
Taylor
fees
Swift, huh?
were. No, it was the show in Vegas with headlined by Blink 182 and
Oh, the When We Were
uh
Young festival.
yeah. So the tickets, general admission, this is the 1 day festival, started at $270 for general admission.
Woo!
The fees on that was like $90.
Yep.
So two tickets with fees was somewhere in the neighborhood of $700 to $750. And I had already resigned myself to paying about $600 with the price of the tickets were. When I saw that, I was just like, absolutely not. Like I just like, no, that is ridiculous. And so I was talking to my coworker about this. He's like, yeah, he's like the only tickets I buy shows to are wrestling shows. And
Funny
so,
enough, Josh, I'm going to a wrestling show on Sunday.
oh,
All
that's
Elite
hilarious.
Wrestling has a pay per view up here in San Francisco. It's going to be my first time at the Chase Center, which is, of course, where the Warriors play. But I
Mhm.
don't go to Warriors games because tickets are just absolutely obscene. I wound up getting a ticket in the 200 level for less than it would cost to buy it on pay per view. So I'm okay
What
with that. It'll be
what
fun.
show? Oh,
AEW
AEW, yeah,
Revolution.
which is what he watches. Because like I was talking to him, and we were just like shooting the shit, and I was like, oh, I was like, I used to watch wrestling and all this other stuff, and apparently he was telling me the WWE Network no longer has all the old things on it now. Now you need to have Peacock or something
Yeah.
now.
Do you want the too long didn't read version?
Yes.
So the WWE Network was originally made by the folks that made the MLB Network, and it was fantastic. They spent a year on it, and it worked great from day one. NBC backed up a Brinks truck with a whole bunch of money a year or two ago and says, "Oh, you can get housed on Peacock." WWE says yes. They build the infrastructure for that in a little less than 2 months, and it shows.
So can you do is it no longer where like you pay like $20 a month and get all the pay per views?
So I'm a little lucky. because I am an Xfinity Internet subscriber, I get Peacock for free.
Hmm.
So if you subscribe to Peacock, you get the WWE network, but usually that's a couple of bucks a month. In my case, I get it for free because again, Xfinity Internet, so I'm not too displeased, but the way it's set up initially was bad. There were issues with porting a lot of the old shows over. They're actually doing pay-per-views as seasons. So WrestleMania 38 is season 38 and it just looks so clunky because that's not the way it works, and everything was fine the way it was before, and there was no reason to change it except somebody made a whole bunch of money.
So do you still get the pay-per-views then that way, or do you have to pay for them separately now?
No, you get the pay-per-views. They
Oh,
toyed with the idea of making the big four shows, WrestleMania, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series,
the only four you want to
separate
watch.
events.
Yeah.
They didn't do it.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah. But like I said, it was just a total, just like random. Like I was talking to this guy who I work with, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I watch wrestling shows," and then like we started talking, and it was just funny.
Well,
Um,
tell them your podcast co-host is going to Revolution on Sunday. I can be bought if you want to, tell me to make a sign. That'd be fine.
all right. Well, Andrew, you got anything coming out this week?
Let's see. So Saturday's a pretty big day.
Yeah.
Saturday, we've got 3 Derby preps across the country. I will have my latest edition of the Derby Bubble up on the Pollock Report, I believe, on Thursday of this week. We're recording this on Wednesday night. Just sent that in this afternoon to be edited and posted and shined up. So that'll be there. And yeah, I'm basically planning on a gamble palooza on Saturday, dinner with the fiance on Saturday night, and then wrestling on Sunday. It's a heck of a weekend.
Fun. Yeah, we're gonna be doing our live show Thursday night. Caleb is actually at Oak Lawn Park this week, so he will be over at Oak Lawn, so he's out this week. So I got Ed DeRosa to come pinch hit.
Before
So
I forget, special thanks to the Wolf of Oaklawn Chase for pitching in for me last week. Really appreciate that. Gotta say though, I expected more in the way of viewers because I figured people would just flock knowing I wasn't there.
yeah, I mean maybe you're the draw. Maybe you're
How
the face.
scary is that?
Maybe you're the face.
Yeah, do me a favor, float that to Ed tomorrow and see how far that goes.
Yeah. Sorry, gimmick.
It's all right.
But yeah,
It's
so
okay. I have my friend Beamy to keep me warm
goodness
at night.
gracious.
Mwah.
I told Gino that that was the worst thing to happen to us.
You're not wrong.
But yeah, so Ed's gonna be nice enough to. He was nice enough to fill in. He's gonna be joining us around 9 Eastern, eight Central. So we'll start a little bit without him, but we're gonna be focusing on the Gotham card, and taking a closer look at that. I'm playing that Gotham contest that they're having at Naira Bets. If you're not like a huge player, right, and $300 isn't like a crazy amount of money that you would normally play on a weekend. um those Naira contests are awesome. There's usually enough added money in there. It's like you double your bankroll and you got a good shot at cashing, taking home some extra cash on top of that. Plus, this time they're actually putting up a BCBC seat.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, so I think it's going to draw pretty good. But I know there's a lot of other racing going on, so maybe people are going to be looking elsewhere. But that'll be fun. And then so I'm looking forward to playing in that, streaming tomorrow night, and then yeah, there's tons of racing this weekend, so it's a good weekend. I'm probably next week. Andrew will probably have to try and record early if possible, since I will be in Vegas Wednesday night. But
You mean
we'll
you
figure
don't
something
want to
out.
stream from the plane and use the Southwest internet? You monster.
No, but we are going to try and stream Thursday night from a hotel room, and that's going to be just. I think we're going to be blasted by that point, but we'll see what happens.
Well,
But yeah, it should be a fun couple weeks here. So yeah, catch us on thewronglead.com at wrong_lead. Like, subscribe.
all the buttons, all the
Yeah,
buttons.
all the buttons. If you have us on one thing, like us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, and just help us out. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for us. So we'll catch you guys later.
Have a good night, everybody. Good day, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening. Enjoy yourselves.